Joining me to discuss his bill is Heritage Minister James Moore. Welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure.
I guess the obvious question is, why do we need this bill and what will it do?
Well, I mean, look, as conservatives, I believe in property rights and I believe in getting tough on crime. This bill deals with both of those subjects. Property rights is not just a physical expression, it's actually intellectual property as well. And so when somebody invests thousands of dollars or millions of dollars into a software concept or a video game or a movie or a CD or music, that they have a right to protect themselves from those who would steal from them. And that's what this is about. So, and copyright affects everybody, educators, students, creators, consumers, it affects everybody. And we haven't updated our copyright legislation in Canada in basically a generation, since before iPods existed. And so it's time, and we want to do this. And what it'll do, in essence, is bring Canada up to an international standard of intellectual property rights. It will therefore help and drive investment into Canada to create jobs and to move the economy forward. So the Prime Minister has talked, of course, that we want to focus on the economy in this fall session of Parliament. This is part of it, but people need to sort of follow those steps. Support the right of people to protect themselves and to invest into the digital economy. It'll lead to jobs and growth in the Canadian economy.
Is it really aimed at the individual user as much, or is it aimed at the big-time pirates that run big websites that have thousands of subscribers?
Yeah, I mean, the big-time pirates do obviously a great deal of damage in Canada. I mean, we want to make piracy illegal in Canada, which is what this legislation does. We implement WIPO, which is international intellectual property regime, so we implement the WIPO treaties. But we also are pro-consumer. As we said in the campaign, we don't believe in an iPod tax. We don't believe in putting new burdens on consumers, new costs on consumers. The NDP are already calling for that as an amendment to this bill. We also want to make sure that it's clear to consumers that if you have a CD and you want to have that music and you want to have it on your laptop and your iPod and your BlackBerry and your iPad and you want to move the music around for your personal consumption, you're free to do so. Don't think that you're violating copyright. You're free to do all these things and to use it for your personal use and to have a CD and give it to your spouse and let them listen to it and burn it onto their computer. Like, we want to make sure that consumers understand this is a pro-consumer bill, a pro-investment bill that protects those who are investing into the digital economy.
Now, is it going to be, the onus going to be on the copyright holder to seek out people who are breaking the law, or is the government going to actually unleash police forces?
No, it's civil penalties, and it's up to the rights holders, the person who's the creator, to enforce this. But they're not standing alone. Part of this legislation, we have internet service providers who have to be part of the regime. So, if, for example, if the Don Martin Comedy Hour, I know you're working on it.
That's like right now.
There you go. Yeah, so you do a documentary on yourself. Why not?
Wow.
And you have this film that's out there, and you find that somebody has taken this film, has basically burned it onto a computer and is offering it free to the world. What you can do is you contact the internet service provider, get a lawyer, contact the internet service provider, and the internet service providers now have to be part of the enforcement. And they can say to somebody, hey, look, I don't know if you know this, but what you just did is illegal. Take that down off your website. You can't do that. That's a violation of Don Martin's copyright. You can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. So internet service providers are now engaged in the enforcement of this on the side of the creators, which is a step forward. We don't go as far as the Americans have done, which is to have notice and takedown, which basically is if the Don Martin Comedy Hour is up on a website and you want it taken down, in other jurisdictions they just unplug the person's internet and they have to prove that they didn't violate the law in order to get their internet started up again. We think that's a step too far. We think this is good for consumers but also for creators and balances things out.
I'm going to have to beg people to download a Don Martin Comedy Hour. Trust me on
that
one, James.
You might be surprised.
Mind if I shift gears a little bit? The CRTC chairman, Conrad von Finkenstein, is being replaced, or not being replaced. His contract's not being renewed. I guess he wanted to have it renewed. Does a new chairman mean a new direction for the CRTC? I know you've butted heads with them a little in the past. Do you see that changing the fundamental drift of the CRTC? Well,
I think it's overstatement to say we butted heads in the past. We have from time to time disagreements with different folks in the government, but Conrad von Finkenstein, I think, has been a fine public servant. We appreciate his time as chair of the CRTC. Keep in mind, by the way, in the last 40 years, there have only been 2 chairs of the CRTC that have had their terms renewed, and only one of them actually served their full second term. So it's quite common for someone to serve one term and then move on with other opportunities in life. So we will have a new chair of the CRTC. The process begins shortly, and the parameters about the kind of person that we're looking for and the criteria and all that. And it's a very open, transparent process, obviously because of the commercial sensitivity and so on. It'll be very transparent, and we'll have a new chairman in place probably early in the new year.
Speaking of broadcast media, I'll ask this question for my colleagues at the other network. Is the CBC going to get hit pretty hard in the budget cuts? There's some talk 5%, some talks 10%. Which way are you leaning on this?
Well, you'll have to wait, and I know that you wait with bated breath. And I know Christmas for you is in December 25th. It's budget day, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, but no, when the budget comes out, people will see the details of it. But look, keep in mind, we have an obligation to make sure that the country, that we arrive at a balanced budget. It's our commitment to Canadians. And the CBC, we've, in an era of declining cost of production in a digital era, the end of analog television, more digital, dynamic. Those analog towers cost the CBC millions of dollars every year. Those are no longer active. They have other cost pressures as well, but they've also gone from 8 unions down to 5. They've made the CBC more efficient, and the idea that the CBC can't be more efficient has been proven wrong by the work that Hubert Lacroix and those at the CBC have done to make the CBC more efficient now than it has been before. So we're going to balance the budget. CBC will do their part, and it's important for the country.
Okay, well, you can't cut the CTV, so anyway, on we go. Just curious on the final question. War of 1812 is getting a celebration fund. Is it about $11 million? Do we really want to celebrate a war? Was it that significant? Or some people call it the stupidest war we ever did, but
Well,
sure
we were invaded.
Might be a little harsh.
Well, we were invaded, of course. It was President Madison who declared war on Canada.
Right.
So there was that. But it is actually very important. And the full package of what it is that we plan to do, we're going to be announcing in the next couple of weeks, because a lot of the stuff is actually a partnership with the province and the government of Ontario. So we have to wait till the campaign ends in Ontario to make the announcement. But it is very important. There are not a lot of very large seminal moments pre-1867 that are of pan-Canadian consequence. The War of 1812 was. After the War of 1812, we've had 200 years of the healthiest and most prosperous trade relationship with the United States in the history of the world. Without the War of 1812, the French fact is not protected in North America. Without the War of 1812, Aboriginal Canadians would have suffered the same fate as Indian Americans suffered south of the border. And it was because of the War of 1812 that we had the path to 1867. So a long way of answering a short question. Yes, it matters, and we want to make sure that Canadians are fully aware from coast to coast to coast about what the consequences were of the war.
I always drive my American friends crazy by saying we beat you in the only war we ever had, but that was actually with the Brits. All right, Heritage Minister James Moore, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure as always, Don.